Hey guys, I know you've been waiting, but finally this week I'm going to release my first video in my series Pitches, the slider. So stay tuned and I'm going to show you how to throw the slider. Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to throw the backspin slider. The backspin slider is a great pitch to learn because it has a high spin rate and it has a nice sharp break to it. So before I get started, this is video 1 in a series of 4 videos. This one we're going to cover the slider. The next one will be the screwball, then the backspin pitch, and then the knuckleball. In this video I'm going to show you 2 clips of a slider and a screwball together, just as a little kind of a teaser for the next video. But you can see from this cut how that the angle, or I should say the break of these 2 pitches being so different is really an advantage for you as a pitcher for deception, and also to make that batter, chase a pitch out of the zone. A slider is a pitch that breaks from your pitching arm side to your glove arm side, and I'll go into that a little bit more later. So when that pitch leaves your hand, it should be rotating slightly to your glove hand side. The axis of rotation should not be perpendicular with the flight or the track of the ball, because if it does, it doesn't break. It just will run true because the pressure on both sides of the ball is the same. However, if you turn the axis slightly on your release, that ball is going to have more pressure on this side, less pressure on this side. It's called the Magnus effect. There's a lot of information on the internet if you want to look that up. But that high pressure on the pitching arm side is going to drive that ball over to your glove side. So let's start with the grip. All right, I'm going to show you the grip for the slider. Now the first thing I want you to do is get some striped balls. If you haven't seen my video on striping balls, check it out right here, and you can see how I stripe these balls, and it's going to make your practice a lot easier, because when you're learning a new pitch, especially breaking pitches, you want to be able to watch that break, that rotation, that axis of rotation relative to the flight of the ball. It's very difficult to do that without a stripe on the ball. So go ahead and stripe the balls. Now, the grip for the slider, take that stripe, set it vertically like that, and then turn your horseshoe upside down. Then take your index finger, middle finger, spread them across, put the pads of your fingers on the seam, just like this. Get a nice wide grip, because that's going to improve the spin rate, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But get nice and wide, same distance on both sides. Now on the back, put your thumb between the seam and the stripe. Now your ring finger goes on the side and it's for support. The little finger does nothing, it just goes along for the ride. So that's the grip for the slider. Now just a moment ago I said you want a nice wide grip because that improves the spin rate. The spin rate is very important because that gives you an advantage with the bat deflection or the ball deflection angle off of a bat. It also causes the ball to break a little bit sharper. So you want a high spin rate, and the way to get that is with the fingers wide. If you haven't seen my series on power pitching, I've got a link right here. Check that out. I go into much more detail about the advantages of pitching with a high spin rate. Now, if you're familiar with baseball, this pitch is really modeled after a 2-seam cutter. A 2-seam cutter is thrown like this, and they call it a cutter because when you're throwing the pitch, you're throwing it with a kind of a cutting motion, and you're throwing it with the axis of rotation slightly off perpendicular to the flight path of the ball. This causes the ball to run to the rotation side. So it's essentially the same pitch, only it's slower, and because it is slower, it's going to break more. It has more time to break before it actually gets to the plate. So when we throw it with the backspin, we use a wide grip because we want to accentuate that spin rate. You're going to get better action on the ball that way. One thing you want to do is practice this grip. That's something you can do when you're not on the field, when you're not actually throwing practice pitches, but maybe you're sitting on the couch watching TV, watching movies, whatever. Just grab a ball, practice that grip, be able to grip that without looking at it, because obviously when you're pitching in a game, you're not going to have a striped ball. I can tell just by the feel of that seam on my thumb, the feel of the seams on my fingertips, if I have the grip right. So that's one of those little areas of muscle memory that you can work on without actually being on the field. I'm going to show you the screwball and the slider back to back So you can see how much difference there is between these two pitches and how wide of a hitting zone this creates for the batter. First, I'm going to show you the slider. If you follow the track or the trajectory of the slider here, it looks like it's going up straight up this post, and then it veers off, breaking to the glove side. Now, here is the screwball pitched on approximately the same track, and as you can see, it breaks sharply to the pitching arm side. Now, you can see how difficult it would be for a batter if he sees both of these pitches back to back. So now, this is the advantage of learning good breaking pitches, and this is just a little preview of the next video, learning the screwball. Now let's move on to some slow motion analysis of the slider, and you can see the release and the proper rotation of the ball relative to the ball track or ball flight, and we'll break it down part by part. Hopefully you'll be able to adapt this pitch to your own pitching method and your own techniques, and you'll benefit by becoming a more competitive pitcher, win more games. I'm going to show you a slow motion version of the slider from the front. We'll play it through and then we'll step through it afterward, and I'll make some notes here for you. Okay, let's go ahead and back it up. With the backspin slider, just as a reminder, a slider is a pitch that is going to break from your pitching arm side to the glove arm side. If you're a left-handed pitcher, it's still going to break from your pitching arm side to your glove arm side. It's still a slider. The slider is the pitch that you're going to pronate your wrist. Pronation just simply means is you're going to turn your wrist toward your body. I'll show you here in just a moment as we step through what wrist pronation is. At this point, I am pre-pronating my wrist. It just feels more comfortable for me to do it this way. You can wait until you reach behind you to do it, but I just prefer to go ahead and roll my hand in and pronate that wrist. At this point, the ball's in my glove, so the batter can't see my hand. So let's go ahead and step through. And as I take my step, and my hand reaches the side of my leg here, you can see the wrist pronation. This just means that the palm of the hand is facing away from the body. It's facing third base. The elbow is facing third base. The shoulder starts to rotate in as I'm stepping through. Now at the high point here in the back, as I start to step through, now you notice that the shoulder begins to drive down and through. So this is kind of an unnatural motion, so I'll just warn you right now that when you start to throw this pitch, in the beginning, you're going to get some soreness right here, and you want to take it easy. Once you start feeling that soreness, back off, give yourself a couple of days, 2 or 3 days to rest, come back and throw it again. But you don't want to get it too aggravated. You don't want to end up at a orthopedic doctor. When I first started throwing this pitch, it got really sore in here, so I backed off. It took me a while to get used to it. I can throw hundreds of pitches now, and it doesn't bother me anymore, but it did take a while. So anyway, let's go ahead and step through. Now, as we drive through, you notice the shoulder does continue to drop. I come through in the same position that I went back to my windup. Elbow out toward third base, ball toward third base. What I do here is I make a mental reference point as I'm coming through here. I'm driving the ball with the front edge of my hand on my little finger side and the thumb. This is my mental picture. I'm driving this right to the trajectory or to the target. And as I come through, here on the backside, the wrist is turned about 90-degree angle from my forearm, right about here. And as I drive through, I start to turn the wrist, and the hand and forearm come completely almost straight on release. But as you notice, the back of my hand is facing the first base side, because that's the way you want the ball to rotate. The travel of the ball is this way, but the rotation is this direction. And this gives you that break from the pitching arm side to the glove arm side. And then on release, actually, even though I picture the little finger driving, and it really is right about here. The little finger and the thumb are driving right toward the target, but actually on release, it's the middle finger and thumb in the back. You'll see that in just a moment when I show you the side view in slow motion. But on release, the wrist flips the ball toward first, but the direction of the ball is right toward the target. And then this is the high pressure side of the ball. low pressure side, and that's what causes the ball to drive or to break to the first base side, or I should say the glove hand side. So let's move on now to the side view, slow motion. All right, we'll play the slider from the side in slow motion, and then we'll make some notes here in just a minute. Okay, back to the beginning. Notice here, as in the previous video with the slider in slow motion from the front, I am pronating my wrist in the glove so I get my shoulder, elbow, wrist rotation. As you can see here, the ball is facing the third base side. The back of my hand is against my thigh, keeping that pronation. You'll notice that the wrist and the forearm is at about a 90-degree angle. If you've seen my series on power pitching, this is what I teach for the four-seam backspin pitch. And so that mechanic is consistent, and it gives you the ability to put a higher backspin rate on the pitch. So now here coming forward, as you see that shoulder's dropping, everything stays pronated. As I pass my thigh, the back of my hand is just against the thigh there. If you'll notice, I maintain that angle of about 90 degrees till here. And just about the back of my thighs when I start to release that angle. And at this point, I'm almost straight at release. So that wrist angle changes from 90 degrees to 0 within this part of the arc. And that gives you a really good backspin rate consistent with all the backspin pitches. As I mentioned in the front view, the middle finger and the thumb are aligned with the trajectory of the ball. But if you notice here, the axis is turned slightly to the glove side, and that's what you want to maintain on release. So as you flip your wrist, the back of your hand is going to be facing your glove side, so that keeps that rotation, axis turned slightly to the glove side, and then maintains, of course, the high pressure on your pitching arm side, low pressure side of the ball on the glove side, so that will cause that ball to break toward your glove side. So when do you throw this pitch? What is a good time to use it? Let's start with the left-handed pitcher, and we'll talk about the right-handed pitcher in just a moment. If you're a left-handed pitcher, you're probably going to use this slider more than a right-handed pitcher because you're going to face more right-handed batters. You're going to use pitches that break in more often than you will pitches that break away. Pitches that break away tend to get hit back up the middle more. Pitches that break in tend to be fouled, rolled over, not hit as well, or they're hit into the strong side of your defense. So let's talk about the left-handed pitcher. You're going to throw that pitch in on right-handed batters. Say, for example, you have a strike on a right-handed batter. Maybe you've thrown a knuckleball in there or a straight pitch, whatever. He's taken it, and now you have 2 strikes on him, and you're going to go after him. So this way, you can go in with the slider from the left side, start it over the middle of the plate, let it run off on his feet, and let him try to dig that pitch out. So you're going to use it a lot if you're a left-handed pitcher. Now, if you're a right-handed pitcher, you're still going to use it, but sometimes it's going to be a little different. For example, you're going to face left-handed batters. So you're going to use it just like the left-handed pitcher uses it against the right-handed batter. You're going to throw it in on his shoes, down low. Have him set up for strike 3, throw it in there, make him protect, make him dig that pitch out. Another way you can use this pitch, if you have 2 strikes on the batter, if he's not real familiar with your slider, you can throw it up there to his shoulder. It'll break in over the corner for a strike. Now you have to be careful that you don't fool the umpire too, because sometimes you throw a pitch that's so good you can fool the umpire. And I have a video before about communicating with umpires, and I deal with that subject. But it's important that he's familiar with you. At least in your warm-ups, he sees your pitch a couple of times. That way, if you throw a good one up there on strike 3, he'll call the batter out. Next video is on the screwball. Great companion pitch for the slider. And if you have any comments or questions, leave them. I always answer your questions. So, till next time. See you then.